Welcome to this chess endgame review of king versus king and doubled pawns. And so in this position, it is white's turn to move. Now here, if it was black's turn to move, he could just push his king forward and block these pawns, and the game would be a draw because white would not be able to make forward progress with his pawns. But in this position, it is white's turn to move. And so he moves his king forward, preventing the knight from stopping his pawns by blocking on g4. And so here, the king moves to f5 to prevent this king from getting in front of his pawns. And so this game plays out as if it was king versus king and lone pawn, but this extra pawn will make a difference, as we will see here shortly. So the pawn moves forward, and black tries to block the momentum of this pawn and stop white's progress. But the king moves and forces black to make a move and back away from the pawn. So the king moves straight back, and white presses forward with his king, and black tries to stop white's momentum, and a pawn move. White is slowly making progress forward and pushing the black king back. And so as the king retreats back, white moves forward, and the black king positions itself in front of white's king to prevent white's king from moving forward. Moving forward, and the pawn pushes forward. And so black once again stops this pawn, and the king moves here to make a waiting move, and now black is forced to move backwards. And so here, once again, white moves up, and the black king stops the white king from moving to this f7 square to gain control of the queening square. And so the pawn moves forward, and here black steps in front of the pawn, and if white would move here to g6, it would be a draw by stalemate. And if this extra pawn was not here in the game, then indeed it would be a stalemate or a draw. If white moved away, the king could capture the pawn. But this extra pawn makes all the difference. So when these pawns are doubled, it's always a good idea to keep this trailing pawn back and then wait until you can use it to make a move. And now this forces black to move out from in front of this pawn. And so once he moves, white can jump up to f7 and control this queening square on g8. And so here white would win because the king must move back here to h6, and then white will queen his pawn. And with the extra material, it's an easy win. And so one other possibility to be aware of in this king versus king and doubled pawns is if this pawn had already been pushed forward, and here we have white attempting to make progress as he did in that last example, and the king tries to block the pawn, and here we have this possible stalemate position, so the king cannot move here or it would be a stalemate. And so he pushes his pawn to force the black king out from in front of the pawn once again. And so here white has to be very careful, because if he played as he did in the previous example and just moves to f7 with his king, here this would be a stalemate because this pawn has been pushed forward already and is blocking this escape route for black's king. So that's something to be aware of in this position. So here, instead of moving king to f7, it is better to just move forward with g8, queening this first pawn. And so this forces black to capture. And now white can just move in front of the king and take the opposition, forcing the king to move to the side. So black's king will have to move. And then here, white can take control of this queening square. And so once the black king moves, we have g6, and this pawn will march forward, creating a queen and winning the game. And so I hope you enjoyed this chess endgame of king versus king and doubled pawns. Please be aware that if these doubled pawns are on the rook file, then the game may turn out differently. And I encourage you to check that out on your own. Practice some of these pawn endings, especially with the doubled pawns, compared to just a single pawn. And so if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments or suggestions. Thank you, and have a great day.